The title of Lecture 2 is The Psychic Realm. Selected answers by Ambrose Worrall to questions from the audience will follow the lecture.
Now let's consider the meanings of some words often associated with the subject of spiritual powers and psychic phenomena. There are also a few words that could be used to describe these unusual events that for one reason or another are not so used. Let's look at some examples. Nearly everyone is familiar with the word supernatural. Some people start to shiver when they hear this word. It means something very strange to them. But the general meaning of this word is of or relating to an order of existence beyond the visible, observable universe. And I think it means a little more than that, because everything in the universe that is observable is not visible. Can't see the air, can you? It's observable in a storm, a windstorm. So I think the dictionary is a little bit off in its description there. Some people interpret it to mean of or relating to some kind of God, and others associate it with the activity of an infernal being, ghosts or spirits. So you can put any interpretation you like on it, can't you? From sublime to the ridiculous. We can define it as that which is above or superior to the recognized powers of nature. In other words, we talk about supernatural power. Few people would use the word preternatural to describe occult happenings, yet the word means beyond nature, or that which exceeds what is natural or regular in nature, or is inexplicable by ordinary means. We can say supernatural power is capable of producing preternatural results. Miraculous is a very common word, greatly used in advertising. You hear about miracle cleaners, miracle drugs. So many things are termed miraculous. Many so-called miracles result simply from the calling forth of a power residing in the laws of nature, but not within their ordinary operation, and therefore might be termed extra-natural. The prefix extra meaning outside of the ordinary. So now we've got supernatural, preternatural, and extra-natural. That's the nature of the English language. It can be very confusing. But it would be acceptable to say supernatural power sometimes is responsible for extra-natural effects. We find this in healing. It isn't an ordinary thing for a tumor to disappear in just a few minutes. But it has happened right in this church, and that is extra-natural. Something speeded up the healing process. Call it a supernatural power if you wish. So the religious mind would probably be satisfied with the familiar phrase, God performs miracles. Now the word occult refers to secret knowledge always involving the supernatural agencies and powers. The noun mystic is apt to induce a feeling of awe and wonder. Yet the word mystical means having a spiritual meaning or reality that is neither apparent to the senses nor obvious to the intellect. That's out of Webster's dictionary. The mystic, the occultist, the metaphysician, if you wish to call him that, or the Mahatma, would say that to them mystical means of relating to or resulting from an individual's direct communion with God or ultimate reality. That puts the Maharisha and these other people who claim to be mystics on this higher level when they give that definition to mystical things. So don't be overcome by words and descriptive titles. Find out exactly what they mean, expressed in simple language and as applied to the situation under your consideration. We were down in Tucson, Arizona. We ladied there with a group of other ladies. I'd gone to one of these Maharishas and for $300 took a course. In the course, the Maharisha said he would give each one a secret word and he must tell no one what that secret word was. So taking each one aside, he whispered their particular secret word in their ear. However, one lady broke the rule and she told another lady at the meeting what the secret word was he'd given her. She said, that's what he gave me. When they conferred together, he gave everybody the same word. $300 a piece. However, in spite of all these things, most of us are aware that there is an unseen and unheard universe recognized by physical science. We're learning lots more about it these days as we send these astronauts and satellites out into the air. And some of the things we can't see are very important to us, like the air we breathe. If we couldn't breathe, we wouldn't stay here very long. We would become unconscious. We need the air, the oxygen. We don't hear the radio waves directly, but we can prove they are present by turning on our radio receiver. All kinds of waves going through this room at this time, cosmic waves, television waves, short radio waves, long radio waves, standard broadcast waves, all kinds of waves going through the air, but we are absolutely unaware of them. We are aware of something like less than 1/1,000,000th of the actual waves that are going through the air. So just because you don't register them, you don't see them, feel them in any way, doesn't mean to say they're not there, because science can pick them up with instruments. There's our dear friend, the force of gravity. We don't see that or hear it, but if we fall to the ground, we are quite aware of its existence. Now, outside of this unseen, unfelt physical world, there is a world we call the psychic world, the world of the mind, if you wish to call it that. Generally, this encompasses everything that is outside the sphere of physical science or knowledge. To some of us, this is a real world, for we have developed an awareness of its existence. We have seen its beauty, communicated with its inhabitants, and being blessed by the broadening of our horizons through knowledge obtained through meditation and contemplation of its infinite possibilities. Where is the psychic world? It's everywhere. It's all about you. It's within you. You cannot get away from it. So I think it's good to know something about it if you can't get away from it.
This is what's causing the problem.
And I think you're absolutely right. Now, the psychic world seems to be omnipresent. That it's here all the time, never a moment without it. It is blending and merging with the material world. It's as mysterious as absolute space, more varied and wider in its equivalent coverage than the electromagnetic spectrum of the physical sciences. And this in itself is being expanded by physical science as they develop finer and finer instruments. Now, in the material realm, we live in a space-time continuum. Everything has space, and everything takes time. We call that space-time continuum. Space and time going together. In the psychic realm, there exists neither time nor space as we have on earth, but a condition we can only describe as a level capacity continuum. You won't find that in any book unless they copy what I said. At least I've never seen it in any book. Now, each individual has an awareness level and an awareness capacity. And you have this in the present state of spiritual consciousness. The capacity can be increased and the level changed by the individual's effort. It is not necessary for a person to experience physical death to permit him to function in the psychic world, because the psychic world is the world of the mind, and he is in it when functioning on the physical plane. Now, most people don't think they're in the psychic world now, and there are a few that are not, because their minds are not operating. At least, we are not aware that they're operating. The different kinds of time also, you know. There's time of aging. The time we talk about is ticked off by the clock, as I said last week. But biological time is not a straight line on arithmetic paper, it's a curve. The older you get, the faster you grow older. Or so it seems. It also seems that the time gets shorter, doesn't it? Now, in exploring the psychic world, we are conducting a systematic search into relatively unknown territory. Now, in spite of the fact that a great many books have been written on the subject, some of them based on experience expanded by the fertile imagination of the writer, and I can tell you some of them really have fertile imaginations. So I think it behoves each one of us to try to explore this psychic world ourselves, so we will know firsthand about what goes on in that wonderful realm. So we look upon ourselves as explorers. And where are we going to start? We're going to start from where we are right now, aren't we? Where are we now? Each one is on a level of his own awareness. Those who have never had a psychical experience or a hunch or an intuition, that's what the ladies have. Men have hunches and the ladies have intuition. Intuition's a little better than the hunches. But these are all of psychic nature. Some people just say, I have a feeling. Some people say, I just don't feel right down here about it. That is all psychic. It's in the early stages. So it can be developed. Now, where are we on this level of awareness? The level of awareness of a person is determined by the types of thoughts he entertains. In fact, that's the only kind of awareness you have. The kind of thoughts you entertain. You think success? You'll be successful. You can't help it. Because everything else is tuned out. Think failure? You're very likely to fail. But you can express confidence and still not have any inside of you, just like people can express faith but have no faith whatsoever inside of them. So it's a matter of how you actually feel and how you actually think that develops your awareness. And I call it a level of spiritual specific gravity. The lower thirds having a heavier nature, and the higher thoughts a higher nature or level or frequency. Now, what is your capacity for awareness? It's limited by your willingness to reach out and forget yourself. Actually, I can't think of any subject more boring than oneself. The other fellow's the one that's interesting. So let's forget self and reach out beyond this individual self, which we sometimes feel so proud of. Now, it is possible to explore your psychic world while the physical body is asleep. And as a matter of fact, everybody does this. Everybody. Everybody goes to sleep. Everybody goes out in the psychic world. The only problem is it's difficult to carry the memory of the experiences back across the threshold into the physical state of consciousness. The best way to explore your psychic world is through prayer and meditation practiced with self-discipline, fervent and frequent regularity, a noble purpose and an admiring reverence. In other words, if you're going to do any meditating and praying, it requires this self-discipline. Don't be like Mr. Wiggs, who the cabbage passed. He used to meditate and nobody thunk himself to sleep, they say. You don't want to go to sleep because that isn't going to do you any good. So when you meditate, you have to be aware and be ready to receive. It is just as important to gain knowledge of the psychic world as to become informed of the laws, principles, and phenomena of the material realm. After all, you're all going there someday, some a little earlier than others. So I think we should aim at a balanced education that embraces studies of both psychical and the physical environments, because we live and move and have our being in both while still on the earth. Tomorrow we're going down to Wake Forest University at Winston-Salem, there to speak to the faculty and the students, and also there will be a public meeting tomorrow night. And then we will speak just to the faculty and students the following morning. They have told us they know nothing of the subject. Now that is hard to understand, isn't it? When we think that for thousands of years the subject has been talked about, and Jesus, of course, he demonstrated these things. He knew about the psychic world. And we have all the Christian churches, and I understand that this is a Christian college, yet they know nothing about the psychic world. So I'm going to try to tell them all about it in about 2 hours. It takes 100 to cover the subject. That's why I have to cut some of these topics a little short. The materialist, and we have a few of them around, but that poor fellow is the result of unbalanced education. He believes that death ends all. A broadening of his studies would reveal to him that the event called death applies only to the ability of the individual to function in and through his physical body. That's all it means. You no longer can speak as I'm speaking, or hear as you're hearing, or feel as you're feeling. But you can still think as you're thinking without the physical body. It isn't necessary for the function of thinking. Now, if you're a materialist, you have a very limited form of manifestation. For instance, may have taken you an hour to get here in the physical form, but mentally you can be here in a flash. But compared with the possibilities open to the soul when free to function totally in the psychic world, we are practically tied down, stationary. Of course, you could be at the Super Bowl now via television, couldn't you? That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. In the psychic world, you can do just that without the television. Now, the psychic world is the soul world. It's the world of the mind. Now, we limit the use of the mind by the parameters constructed out of our waking experiences with material laws. Particularly those involving time and space. You go to California right now and see and hear something while you're sitting here without television, without radio. Yes, you can. I have done it. But our minds are apt to put the limitations on these things. And we have to overcome this limitation. So the purpose of exploring your psychic world is to become familiar with the new freedom available to you now. It will allow you to increase your capacity of awareness, and through this increase in awareness, to place truer relative values upon the treasures of the earth and those of the mind and spirit. Now, this event called death means that the soul is permanently released from its body of flesh. It wakes to find itself in the soul world, or as it is commonly called, the spirit world. If the individual concerned had no conscious knowledge of this psychic world prior to the event of his death, he will act as though he is limited by physical laws. He gets over there, if he wants to go from here to there, he thinks he has to walk or get on a conveyance or something. He has to learn that he can go from here to there just by thinking it, and he's there. That's the difference between the psychic world and the world of the flesh in locomotion. Now we all value things on the earth. We're all figuring our net worth in dollars and cents. How much are they really worth? After you get into the spirit world, you'll find they're not worth very much. They become very unreal. A gentleman showed me a book today in which a story was written about Olga and I when I traveled astrally from Dayton, Ohio to my home in Baltimore, and found Olga left the light on in the bathroom. So I promptly went in the bathroom, nobody in there, so I put the light up, but my hand went right through the wall. I couldn't switch it off because I was in my spiritual body. So I went up into the bedroom and wakened up Olga and told her to put the light out, wasting electricity. Strange, it actually happened. I didn't know it was in this magazine until this gentleman showed it to me. So the things that are real on the earth are very unreal in the spirit world. But the things in the spirit world are very real, whereas to us on the earth, with our physical senses, they are very unreal. It's a matter of where you're looking at the situation from. Eventually, the arrival of a person in the spiritual world will be accompanied by a teaching, an orientation, if you want to use a modern word, and he will be told how to enjoy the new pleasures of the spiritual realm. And the limitations of physical life will fall away from the mind. The advantage of learning how to function in the psychic environment before death is obvious. And realizing the truth of the old saying, you can't take it with you, will help to soften the loss of the earthly treasures. You haven't really lost anything anyway because it belongs to the earth, it doesn't belong to you. It is wise for those who are qualified to start exploring their psychic world early in life. The old maxim, you are what you eat, is often used in connection with the state of health of the physical body. You are what you think applies equally to the state of health of the mind. The scriptures say, as a man thinketh, so he is. That is a simple and profound statement. But we have to believe it, or it will have no effect upon us. And we should believe it before we attempt to explore the psychic world. Because the way we think and the things we think about, that is what we are going to be attracted to in this psychic or spiritual world. So I say that peace within must be attained before opening the psychic door. Then you will look out on peace in the psychic world. This is most important and should be your secure base for psychic operations. If I want to hear Flip Wilson, I find out what station he's on, don't I? I turn my television set to the station he's on. At the time he's on the air, and I switch it on, in comes Flip Wilson. Nobody else comes in. Flip Wilson's program is on. And it's the same when you want to open the psychic door. You first have to find out the program that you want to receive. If you're filled with fears when you open the psychic door, you're going to receive that kind of a program because your mind is attuned to it. If you're filled with love, beauty, nothing else is in your mind, when you open the psychic door, that's what will be there. And many people are getting into trouble by opening the psychic door without first tuning the mind. They switched on the radio or the television of the mind without first tuning it. And some of them have gotten into real trouble. So this is a very important step, the control of the mind. Now there are various gifts and talents, but they all originate with the Creator. And these gifts and talents are not reserved for any particular race, color, or creed. They are free to everybody. The good Lord made it that way. We all come from the Creator. And one of the gifts given to man is the gift of free will. This allows him to choose between alternatives. Now it's terrible that the free will of many people has been overcome by a variety of means. Advertising, of course, overcomes the free will of people to a certain extent, doesn't it? Religion overcomes the free will of people to a certain extent. Fear overcomes the free will of people to a certain extent. So what you hear and what you see is important to your free will. Examine everything, weigh it in the balances, find out if it's for the greatest good of the greatest number, and if it's fair and reasonable, and then pay attention to it. Very simple rules. So man, by using his free will, creates the environment in which he lives. How did Flip Wilson become a millionaire? He didn't start out that way, did he? But he knew they had a gift. He knew he could make people laugh and be happy in a very sad world. And he is reaping his just rewards, and he's doing a lot of good. He's good medicine for people, isn't he? Making them laugh. They say it only takes 5 muscles to laugh, but it takes 17 to frown. so you can relax by laughing. We all start out with free will, and we should exercise it for the greatest good of the greatest number, and the immutable laws of spirit will take care of you. You have nothing to fear. Now, in exploring your psychic world, certain gifts or talents are of particular interest. These are best described by the word charismata, the Greek language derivative, meaning that such gifts are of a spiritual nature, divinely granted to a person as a token of grace and favor, exemplified by the power of healing, speaking in tongues, prophesying, discernment of spirits, and other demonstrations of similar nature. Now, that's what most people call spiritual gifts. But every gift that you have is spiritual. The man can run the mile in less than 4 minutes. That's a spiritual gift. If he didn't have the gift, he wouldn't be able to run a mile in 4 minutes, or less. So all gifts are spiritual. But some are a little outside of the normal physical manifestation of such gifts. These they call spiritual gifts. The use of charismatic gifts permits a person so endowed to transcend the powers usually manifested through man. For instance, man with his eyes has difficulty seeing what's inside of a closed, opaque package. But I know that it is possible to see inside of a closed, opaque package, even if you've never handled it. Why? Because I have done it on more than one occasion. A doctor friend of ours brought a package to the house, and he wanted to know what's in the package. The man that was with him looked at it and says, I think it's a microscope. And looking at the shape of the package, it could have been a microscope. And I said, no, I'll tell you what I see. I see a golden hand severed at the wrist, and the fingers are curved like this. The fingers are long and slender. And now I see a ball float up. It is not part of the hand, but it is a symbol. And it tells me that hand represents a person who is believed to have control of the things of the earth. I saw that hand just as clear as I see anybody here, yet it's all wrapped up in a package. And I saw it with a spiritual sight. And when the package was opened, here was the golden hand with the long tapered fingers curved like this. In the palm of the hand was the impression of a lotus blossom, and it was the hand from a statue of Buddha. It was mounted on a wooden block, but I didn't get the wooden block. But that was not important. So I know you can see inside closed packages. I know that you have spiritual sight now, but most of us don't use it, do we? But as I say, you can read and hear about these things, but when it happens to you yourself, then you really know, don't you? Now, any study of charismatic gifts requires an understanding of the mind and its relationship with other non-material elements. We can take the position that without the mind, no demonstration of charismatic powers would be possible. The mind itself has no dimensions. It cannot be seen or weighed. has been defined as the element or complex of elements in an individual that feels, perceives, thinks, wills, and reasons. And as I said before, there are tomes written about the mind. I just want to give you a few ideas so you will understand the importance of the mind and how it works before you open the psychic door. The mind of man is the receiving dock for selected ideas and impressions which originate either in spirit, the primary storehouse of pure ideas, or in secondary sources such as television, radio, reading matter, lectures, artworks, nature study, and the thought realm. It is the assembly room where ideas and impressions are arranged in accordance with the individual's desire. I often use a knife as an example. If you think of a knife, you put it together with something else. Maybe you're going to cut roast beef with it. Maybe you're going to carve a beautiful piece of artwork. Or it can be used for destructive purposes. The knife and the other thing put together in the mind makes something entirely different when you have the composite, doesn't it? That's how the mind works. So the mind is the molding department where the assembled ideas and impressions are cast in thought forms produced by an act of the individual's imagination. Remember I said that man is a sub-creator the other day, creating as God creates. So the mind is a storage warehouse where the products of the imagination are stacked on the shelves of memory, subject to recall by the individual. Now, sometimes we have a little difficulty recalling things. However, all things that you have experienced are stored in the memory cells, and they can be recalled from those memory cells to put together with something else of a like nature. Now the mind is also the transmitting station where selected thought forms are broadcast by an act of the will of the individual. A transmission may be directional as to a specific person, or general, in which case the thought forms enter the thought realm and act like satellites, reflecting the will and desire of the individual responsible for their creation. Back in 1923, I was at a party, and I was playing the Victrola while the other people danced. You had to wind it up in those days. And as I looked over, I saw the lady of the house, the hostess, sitting in a chair, watching the dancers. And my attention was called to a black cloud that floated through the wall and settled over the lady's head. I thought something was wrong with my vision for a moment. I blinked my eyes, but the cloud was still there. Then I saw the lady put her hand to her head and put her head down, and she got a strange look on her face. And I wondered if the cloud had something to do with the way she felt. And then, as I looked into the cloud, I saw the face of a lady. And there was a strange look on the face of that lady, too. So I went over to the hostess, and I said, "Is something wrong? She said, oh, I just got the most terrible headache. So I said, do you know a lady of this description? And I described her. Oh, yes, she said, she's one of my neighbors. I said, why would she be hating you? And she says, well, I had limited space for the party and I couldn't invite everyone, so she was not invited. She may be thinking badly about me for that reason. And you know, as soon as she became positive in her mind, the cloud disappeared, the face of the lady disappeared, and the headache disappeared, all at the same time. And that's an example of what you can do with thoughts. Now just think of all the fear thoughts in the world, and fear and hate are so close together that you can hardly separate them. And perhaps this is what's wrong with the world. And that's an example of what you can do with thoughts. Now just think of all the fear thoughts in the world, and fear and hate are so close together that you can hardly separate them. And perhaps this is what's wrong with the world. And if we can control the thought forms that are being broadcast by people, we can change the world, because it will reflect the change of thinking. What kind of satellites have we generated and are floating around us, picking up similar thoughts with which they are attuned, and broadcasting them, and they're coming right back to us, so that whatever we have in our mind, like fear, it shouldn't be there, will be multiplied 1,000-fold, because we are keeping the thoughts alive by thinking them. And nothing can exist for you unless you think about it. So we are masters of our fate if we are masters of the things we think about. Start practicing it and you'll see your whole life will change. Because nothing can circumvent the manifestation of the things you think about. Because this is the immutable law. Now, the physical brain is necessary for the reception of impressions received through the physical senses, and for the transmission of mental action through the physical body of the flesh. I want to move my arm, so I think about it and I move my arm. I want to write, I think about it and I write. But the mind is capable of receiving directly without the use of the physical brain all the impressions to which it is tuned that are transmitted in the thought realm. The physical body is necessary to the individual only as a means through which he can function on the material level. In non-material conditions, the individual can and does express himself directly through his spiritual body, using the same mind that he uses in the physical body. The same thing. An individual temporarily separated from his physical body as in sleep or one permanently separated from his physical body after it becomes lifeless, has all of his mental capabilities in his non-material state. Other people worry about brain damage and whether that will affect the person after he passes over into the spirit world, and I say no, it will not, because the mind is perfect, and because the instrument through which it functions is imperfect, has no effect upon that which is perfect after it leaves the physical body. You can have the finest musician in the world and have an instrument that is not tuned. He cannot produce harmony on that instrument. So don't worry about any physical damage. You don't carry it into the spirit world. An individual can control his mind, but unfortunately most individuals' minds are controlled by others. Control is exercised in many ways. As I said before, many are held in subjection by fear, others by hopes of rewards, and others by rules formulated and laid down by autocratic authorities who have implanted obedience patterns in the minds of their subjects at an early age, together with the notion that the particular authority in control is infallible. You find much of this in religion. The individual who aspires to develop and use his charismatic gifts is advised for his own safety and well-being to gain complete control over the activities that take place in his mind. Otherwise, he may find himself subject to the influence of undesirable forces. Yes, there are undesirable forces. We have plenty of evidence in the physical world of undesirable forces, don't we? We don't have to go into the other world to find it. But just remember, they're all products of the mind, and the mind is active in that other world too. So billions of minds are pouring forth their products into the thought realm. It's like a bank, making deposits in it all the time. And men are under the influence of this environment. Those who live in fear and hate have their minds conditioned to receive destructive thoughts. Thus they can bring into their lives that from which they desire to escape. Those who live not for themselves but for others are in tune with the more ennobling thought forms that elevate and exalt and improve the state of the world. It is important to keep in mind that there are millions of souls in the non-material realm that once lived on earth. These souls are also pouring forth the products of their minds into the thought realm, adding to the utter confusion that exists there. It was Eloise Wilcox that wrote a little verse. She said, I hold it true that thoughts are things endowed with bodies, breath, and wings, and that we send them forth to fill the world with good results or ill. I think she knew what she was talking about. Now, one will not proceed far in the study of charismatic gifts before hearing the term earthbound spirits. In fact, religionists that are afraid to face the truth will warn people to have nothing to do with anything psychic, and they don't even know the meaning of the word. And they attribute everything to the devil, which is a creation of man. One way to hold people in bondage is to fill them full of fear. Eternal being exists. Sure enough, he exists for you. Well, you don't have to think about it. Why don't you think about God? That's the important thing to think about. Well, to understand the meaning of earthbound spirit. A soul is attracted to the environment for which it has prepared itself by its thinking, its habits, and its desires. Thus, a soul who has permanently separated from his physical body may elect to stay in touch with a loved one left behind on the earth. Another may feel the need to continue to serve some cause on earth by impressing and guiding those with whom he worked previously. The miser who stored up for himself treasure on earth is interested in no small degree as to the manner in which it will be used. Yeah, Grandpa saved his money. Pop followed in his footsteps and saved his money. But the playboy grandson, he spent it. He had a good time. He spread it around. He put it to work. He gave a lot of people the benefit of it. He didn't have it hidden away. Now, the alcoholic is still interested in drinking, and most of them are after they go out of the physical body. Will be interested in associating with the earthlings of a like nature. A friend of ours, who was also a psychic, coming home from work, would walk past the saloon, and there was always somebody urging him to go in and get a drink, because they wanted to get a vicarious satisfaction by being in his aura while he took a drink. So he overcame it by saying, yes, I'll get a drink when I get home. So the entity would follow him home, and then he would go and get a drink of water. Now there are people who believe they'll be reborn in a new physical body, and this is running rife today. What are they doing? They're hanging around the earth, trying to get into another body. Just think of the millions and millions and millions of people over there. And all those that are believing in reincarnation are hanging around trying to get into a new body. And just think how they're worrying about abortions and birth control and all these things that are going on these days. Nothing right about it, but there's a lot of people believe in it. So they're earthbound, aren't they? And they end up in many cases by possessing another person. And this possession is sometimes put forth as a proof of reincarnation. But that is a long story, and he could speak for a week just on that one thing. Now, the souls that are not tied to the earth by their interests are free to learn more about the laws that govern the non-material medium in which they function. They become aware that there exists in the refined environment of the soul realm the counterparts of all that exists in the material world. And they can apply the mind to the acquirement of knowledge through reflection, observation, or experiment related to all subjects available study on the earth, plus matters peculiar to the non-material realm. So why in the world anybody want to come back here? Many of these free souls elect to return to the earth level from time to time without reincarnating, to impart knowledge through seers when necessary, helpful both to the inhabitants of the earth and to those who have left their physical bodies, but who for one reason or another have not freed themselves from the earth interest sufficiently to progress spiritually. Each person should believe that he is the repository of infinite possibilities, and know that the limiting factors that confine and restrain him are prejudice and prepossession of the mind. These prevent him from breaking the shackles that hinder his progress to higher states of consciousness. We knock off for 10 minutes?
Yep. I'll be back in 10 minutes sharp. This will give you a chance to stretch your legs.
Now everybody's got the blood circulating again now. Now a great many different gifts. And everybody wants to know what to do about these gifts. For instance, the lady says, how do you control the mind? Very easy. Never fight the things you don't want in your mind. Think about the things you do want in your mind. Many people come to us and they say, I have wrong thoughts in my mind and I can't get rid of them. Of course I can't get rid of them because I keep thinking about them. You can't throw anything out of your mind by thinking about it. You just think it's opposite. You're afraid you're not going to get a job next week? You won't get one. But if you replace that thought with, I will get a job next week, you'll get a job. So you're setting up forces when you think. And that is a gift, spiritual gift. Learn to think constructively. Oh, lots of books written on that too. Bell's ringing now. Well, we have to develop what I call a spiritual orientation of the mind. And I'd say, what's spiritual? That is spiritual which is for the greatest good of the greatest number. That is spiritual. I'd say it's an easy task. Control your mind. But it's like everything else. If you practice it properly, you will become proficient. In fact, you'll become so proficient that you'll be able to look at a newspaper and you won't see any destructive headlines. You're not tuned into them. Of course, there wouldn't be much left of the newspaper, would there? If science makes a great discovery, you'll find it a little paragraph hidden away somewhere. There's a couple of murders in the headlines. That's what's wrong with the world, too. Magnifying the things that should not be even thought about. I want to say a few words about hypnosis. Now, I've been told that hypnosis is not a science. Yet a lot of people are using hypnosis. Now, why should you give up your free will, which is one of your gifts? Why let somebody else take over your mind? Under ordinary circumstances, I say you should not. But if you need psychotherapy, you better go to someone who is fully qualified. And these people tell me that only as a last resort do they use hypnosis. Yet there are people using it who have no psychiatric training whatsoever. And it can be very dangerous. There are a lot of misconceptions and arguments about hypnosis. There are those who say, for instance, you cannot make a person do something which he wouldn't ordinarily do by putting him under a hypnotic spell. This is not true. Because it is the motive behind the act that counts. If a person is put under a hypnotic spell and say, Joe Dokes is going to kill your wife, you better get him first. The motive to protect the wife is greater than the motive against killing somebody. Just to put it that simply. And we have the authority of Dr. Meerloo, psychiatric consultant of the geriatric department, Municipal Health Service of Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And he wrote 2 articles describing these dangerous aspects of hypnosis. They appeared in the newsletter of the Parapsychology Foundation, January, February of 1970, and in Parapsychology Review, March and April of 1970. This is a man that I think is properly qualified to comment on the dangers of hypnosis. So I would advise anyone who is thinking of dabbling with this to first read those 2 articles. And anyway, if you need psychiatric treatment, I don't think you should try to open the psychic door. You're not ready for it. Now, the Bible speaks of spiritual gifts as miracles, signs, and wonders. And the records cover a wide variety of psychic phenomena over a period of about 1,500 years. Now, I've talked to ministers that have gone to seminary, and they have told me that in seminary they were told to soft pedal these things, that probably they were written from the imagination of people, or some of the so-called miracles were merely hero worship. Now, when that is being taught in a seminary to the people that are going to preach to you, you can't expect them to give you anything different, can you? Unless, of course, the person has experiences himself which awakens consciousness to the truth of these signs and wonders and miracles. Then, of course, if he has this awakening, and he gets up and he tells people about it, he's just as likely to be thrown out of the church. Interferes with what the hierarchy has decided people should be told to believe. I can say it because I have no fear of being thrown out of the church. Now, let's talk about phenomena. A great many people have gone through what they call sittings. They've had psychic readings. There are a lot of gullible people in the world. And there are a lot of people that have paid out considerable amounts of money for these psychic readings. Now, there are real psychic readings. And there are true psychics in the world, true mediums. As one gentleman told me at Herrywood Carrington, said only 2% is true and 98% is fraud. Well, I hadn't put it that high. I thought about 10% was true and 90% fraud. There are two kinds of fraud. There is conscious fraud and there is unconscious fraud. In other words, people think they are getting something psychically when they are not. So I say, if you go for a reading, take along with you a tape recorder. Not so much to record what the medium says, but to record what you say. Because some of these people that give the $2 or $5 readings will say, well, dearie, and what is your trouble? So dearie spills the whole trouble that she thinks she has. And the medium feeds it all back to her with a lot of embellishments. And the woman goes away and says, that woman told me everything absolutely correct. So I say, when you go to one of these people, tell them nothing. In fact, if it is a true psychic seer or medium, they don't want their mind cluttered up with anything you want to tell them, because they have to throw it out of their minds in order to get the thing you really need. In other words, don't tell me, I'll tell you, should be the attitude. Now we know that people are not psychic all the time. It'd be a pretty terrible life if all you did was walk around and see spirits all the time that are mixed up with the regular people in the flesh, wouldn't it? You wouldn't know what was what. So you're not psychic all the time. So if somebody says at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, I will give you a sitting, and you go there, yes, they'll give you a sitting. Maybe it'll be a good one, or maybe it's their own imagination. Because if they're taking money for it, they're going to turn it on some way, aren't they? We don't take any money for our psychic gifts. It's all spontaneous. But I can tell you, you can't turn it on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or any other hour. Because the thing that turns on a psychic gift is the need of the person who has come for the reading. That's what turns it on, if it can be turned on. So take your tape recorder along and play it back afterwards and find out how much you told the medium and how much she used what you told her or him to feed it back to you. Speaking in tongues, which I mentioned. Oh, speaking in tongues. If we speak in tongues, there's always a person present that knows the language. Olga gets a message in 17th century French. There's a lady present who understands it. I don't know whether she's here today or not. Yeah, there she is. Now, if we receive a message in Arabic from a person in the spirit world, it comes through in the dialect that that person spoke when on earth. A message given to a doctor from an uncle of his was given in Arabic in the Turkish dialect because the uncle lived on the Turkish border. And we don't know Arabic. but you merely repeat what you hear. And it's pretty hard to pronounce sometimes, but there are true psychic messages. There's no doubt about it. So if you have speaking in tongues, at least take it down on a tape recorder and send the tape to a school of languages and ask them if they can interpret it. If they can't decipher it, it may be revealed to be nothing but emotional babbling. So why listen to it? Not going to do anybody any good, is it? So something of an evidential nature should come through with every psychic sitting. If there is no evidence, I don't see what good it is. You want to hear a sermon, you can go to church and hear a sermon. But many people are paid for a psychic sitting, and all they got was a sermon, which they could have gotten much cheaper just by going to church. So I think now we will get our questions and answers. And if we don't know the answers, we'll tell you so. Olga's going to get down there with a roving mic and we'll get down. There was a psychiatrist that called us just last year. His wife had read a book about automatic writing and she started to do automatic writing. But it wasn't long before she was getting messages direct for President Nixon and wanted to go to Washington to set him straight on a lot of things. She is now in an institution. Now her husband's a psychiatrist and he couldn't break the condition. I mean, it gives you food for thought, doesn't it?
People don't know whether they're excited, and that's very true. But the limitation of the person's ability is when it's very pronounced. But you don't recall.
See, there are no dead people. There are people that have physical bodies, and there are people who don't have physical bodies. They're all alive.
Yes.
No dead people. Well, there's a few of them around the earth. There's not very much alive, I've got to admit that.